Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You have said so." So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Christ?" Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to destroy Jesus. Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called the Christ?" They said, "Let him be crucified." Then he released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and put a reed in his right hand. And they spit on him, and they took the reed, and they struck him on the head. And when they had crucified him, they divided up his garments among them by casting lots. And over his head, the charge they put against him, which read, "This is the King of the Jews." So also the chief priests with the scribes and the elders, they mocked him, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now if he desires him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And Jesus cried out again in a loud voice, and then yielded his spirit. Were you there to watch Jesus stand trial? Can you imagine him before the crowd, bound up like a criminal? Can you see Jesus standing next to Barabbas while the crowds chant for the criminal to be set free? Can you hear them chanting, "Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him"? Were you there when they beat, tortured, and mocked Jesus? Can you see Jesus in your mind's eye, bloody and bruised, skin torn open? And then, just for fun, they push the crown of thorns down a little bit further into his head, trying to sink it into his skull. Can you hear their mocking voices as they hail him king and slap him and spit on him? Were you there when they hammered the nails through his hands and his feet and stood up the cross so that everyone could cast their hate on him? Are you watching the guards gamble for his clothing? Can you smell the sweat and the blood as it drips off of Jesus' body? Can you hear the crowds and the leaders laughing at him and telling him over and over again to save himself? Were you there when Jesus breathed his last breath? Can you see the agony and the pain on his face as he used everything he had left in him to raise up his face and cry out to the heavens for his Father? Can you see his body give way and go limp as he gives up his spirit and as he surrenders his life? On this Good Friday, can you remember the first time you heard this story? Can you remember the piercing pain in your head and in your heart the first time you realized what Jesus had done for you? Do you remember the feeling of the weight of a lifetime of sins being lifted off of your shoulders for the first time? That moment and every other moment of feeling set free from the guilt and the shame and the sin, it's only possible because Jesus, the Son of God, came down from heaven to do this very thing for you, to do this thing that you and I could never do, and that's live a sinless life before a righteous God. Today, we get to ponder, reflect, and sit at the foot of the cross where Jesus gave everything for us. It is my prayer for you today that in your heart, in your mind, and in your very soul, you'll be able to feel God's grace pouring out over you, completely setting you free from the slavery and bondage that your sins once held you hostage with. Jesus Christ has done everything to make you sufficient before God, who now calls you one of his beloved children, an heir to his kingdom. So, let the blood and the life of Jesus Christ, which he gave up for you willingly, give you peace today as you remember that he was there at the cross because he loves